So we're talking about Mashiach, and we were discussing, well, we were discussing a few other things, but resurrection, Tchias HaMesim. Look in Tchias HaMesim, of course, we know that's a foundational belief of Mashiach, and we know that every single Jew is going to have Tchias HaMesim. Every single Jew. Tchias HaMesim, it's a process that's going to take 40 years. Some Jews right away, says the tzaddikim, the most righteous, right away. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains that the tzaddikim are going to have it right away because otherwise it's not fair. They worked so hard to bring Mashiach, they're just going to see it from up there, like, looking down and see what's going on in planet Earth. They want to be here. So if they work so hard to bring Mashiach, for sure, they're going to be right at the beginning. So therefore, when we say Tchias HaMesim, 40 years, it's a process of 40 years. But from the beginning, it will be gradually until 40 years. We actually see this referred to in the Talmud because the Talmud speaks about if you have a question serving in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash, well, you're going to ask Aaron. You're going to ask Aaron. And the question is, what do you mean we're going to ask Aaron? On that first day, we're going to ask Aaron? And the answer is yeah. The Lubavitcher says yeah. He's going to be there right away. What? You think Moshe and Aaron are going to be upstairs when we're having Mashiach down here? First day, Moshe is going to be here. Aaron's going to be here. You're going to have a question on the service. You're going to go right to the first Kohen Gadol, the high priest that ever was, and you're going to ask him yourself. So this is very strong proof that the resurrection will begin immediately. The tzaddikim, the righteous ones, the most righteous ones, will enjoy the resurrection right away. And over the process of 40 years, Jew after Jew after Jew will have Tchias HaMesim, will have the resurrection, until the final Jew, so to speak, the most sinful Jew. My belief is, I can't prove this to you, but my belief is that even JC will have resurrection. I assume we won't know who he is because that would probably be very embarrassing to him. But I believe at the end, every Jew will have it, that even he will have it as well.
Will he be Jewish?
Of course he's Jewish. He has a Jewish mother.
No. Like after Tahametim, is he gonna be like Jewish or is he gonna?
He was always Jewish. Yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah, but he started this whole religion, so is
what?
he gonna be flabbergasted?
Tzvi is also Jewish.
But he wouldn't be flabbergasted and his name, all this apikoros happened?
You don't think he knows what's going on? The souls above knows what's going on down here.
You think he does?
Of course he does. He's paying the price. The evil he started has caused more bloodshed of Jews than anything else in all of our history.
Correct.
If you would look at historically, the greatest source, I'm not saying if that was taken away, there wouldn't be any bloodshed, but the greatest source of the bloodshed of the Jews was Christianity.
The church.
No question. So that goes back to him. You could say he was innocent, and then it was his 12 students, all of whom were also Jewish. It was the Council of Nicaea, that's some 300 years later. That's when they decide he's a god. It was as they call it, the early fathers of the church who were scared because they saw they tried to peddle, we'll call it Christianity. I don't know if they used that term in those days, but they tried to peddle Christianity to the Jews. The Jews didn't buy it. The Jews said, no, that's not true. It's garbage. So they didn't have any adherence among the Jews, so they went to the heathens. They went to the pagans. And they were offering them something much more enlightened than anything the pagans had, and they started getting converts. And then the converts, who were, as we'll call them, more spiritual people among the pagans, once they already got to Christianity, they realized that, wait, that's only a watered down, Kool-Aid version of the story. We want the real thing. So then those converts were moving on to Judaism. And then these church fathers were very nervous. We're not trying to proselytize for the Jews who have no interest in converts. We want the numbers ourselves. So that's when they started really, anyway, they didn't like us because we didn't accept JC. But this is when it became really part of their religion, became part of their tenets of faith. We were the son of God, but we lost it because we rejected JC, and therefore now we're the cursed son, and all that stuff. That all came from that point. So for sure, JC and all of his 12 students were all very tied in to all the bloodshed that Christianity caused in the world, and for sure are paying the price every second. It's not like it's over. It's not over at all. So when they come back, as I said, I assume we won't know who they are because I think it'll probably be crazy and incredibly embarrassing for them. That's my thought. Those are my personal thoughts. I've never seen this anywhere. I know the question has been raised. I've never seen a authoritative, this is the answer. It's definitely a question that's raised. And this is just my opinion on it, my feelings, which might not be right at all. But 100% every Jew that comes back, no matter how they lived in this world, They're coming back as a completely devout and believing Jew because the spirit of impurity is removed from the world. So there's no evil inclination. I won't have an evil inclination. You won't have an evil inclination. And Shabtai Tzvi won't have an evil inclination. And JC won't have an evil inclination. And no Jew will have an evil inclination. None. Every single Jew and the entire world will only want to serve God. That will be what we'll all be longing for. That's no question. It seems, again, it's also not definitive, but there does seem to be space to say that possibly also Noachites will have the resurrection. Again, not 100% sure. A lot of these things are ambiguous, not so clear, but I was pretty surprised because I didn't think that was even an option. And it does seem that maybe the Noachites will also have resurrection. For all of us, there's a verse that says, Afar atavel, afar tashuv. You are from the earth, you will return to the earth, right? You're from the dust, you'll return to the dust. And based on that, our sages say that every single Jew alive, when we have the complete revelation of Moshiach, has to experience death. Because the verse says, you're dust and you'll return to dust. And once Moshiach comes, we have eternal life. So we'll never fulfill this pasuk. This verse will never be fulfilled by us. Let's explain. Chassidus explains that doesn't mean like death. As we think of death, it will be a few seconds. I don't remember how many seconds. It's given a few seconds to experience it, so to speak, moments of death, and then we're right back. The Lubavitcher Rebbe even takes it a step further, and he says, you don't even have to do that. Like even those few seconds of death, you could be spared, because when we say you are from the dust and you return to the dust, we also say in our prayers, we say this every day at the end of Shemona Esrei, 3 times a day, V'nafshi ka'afar lakol tihiyah, and my soul should be as dust to all. So the Rebbe says, if you fulfill that verse, if you fulfill that prayer, not verse, V'nafshi ka'afar lakol tihiyah, if you are nullified, if you nullify yourself, if you make yourself like the dust to all, then you're already fulfilled. I come from the dust and I will return to the dust. So therefore, even this temporary few seconds, so to speak, of death is not necessary for you. The world has a mandate of 7,000 years, meaning the world was created in 7 days. Because the world was created in 7 days, there is this 7-day week, there is a 7-day week, which is sort of an unusual number, and yet we see it is the number throughout the cultures of the world, throughout the history of the world. This weird number of 7 is the week, because this is all modeling, obviously not consciously, but modeled off the 7 days of creation. Every day of creation created 1,000 years of history, a millennium of history. There's 7 days of creation, each day created a millennium, 1,000 years of history. So therefore the world has a mandate of 7,000 years. Mashiach is the 7th millennium. All right, the first millennium, second millennium, third millennium. We're in right now, obviously, the 6th millennium. We're in the year 5786. So we're deep into the 6th millennium, more than 3/4 of the way through it. And the 7th millennium is Shabbos, right? In other words, each day of creation. I'm not going to go into all the details because I feel like we're so far behind, so to speak, we're taking so long, but just give you a little insight in this. Every day of creation was created by one of God's 7 holy emotive traits. That trait is visible in the day, and that trait creates the millennium, the 1,000 years created by that day. Like the first day was God's kindness, and therefore that first day, it says everything was created in a state of complete chaos, and we had a sun too powerful for the world to handle, and we had everything, so it's giving, but like beyond our ability to absorb, and that created 1,000 years of history when God gave and gave, and the world couldn't properly absorb it. And that's why people lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, and people had perfect health for their entire life. And this is just giving, but not in a healthy way. And that's why this devolved into it became ultimately in the next millennium, the generation of the flood, or the next day. So that was chesed, God's limitless kindness in the day of creation, that it's everything and it's in chaos and it's too powerful. Limitless kindness in 1,000 years of perfect health, insane longevity, and too much for us to handle. The second day was God's trait of judgment, very intense judgment. As we see that on that day, it was the separation of the waters, right? The whole world was water, and then God separated the waters, and some got to be the upper waters, heaven, and some got to be the lower waters. So separation and with water. That second millennium, we first had intense Gevura, judgment. This is when the world first started turning to idolatry, and what's called the generation of Enosh. That's when they first started worshiping idols. Now, obviously, how could they ever have come to worship idols? I mean, they're all descendants, not so far from Adam, Chava. I mean, they were talking to God. So they started saying, God's so powerful. How can we worship directly? Let's go through his intermediaries, like the sun and the moon. Through them, we'll connect to God. And then they forgot it was through them, and they started worshiping the sun and the moon. So when the world started serving idols, Hashem caused the Mediterranean to flood the world. The world at that time was basically the Fertile Crescent. So the Mediterranean flooded where man lived in the Fertile Crescent, and a third of the world's population drowned. So that's intense gevura, punitive hand, with water, like by the days of creation, it was water, and a third of the world died. And then, of course, that wasn't enough to stop man. And in this millennium, of course, we have the most catastrophic punishment, cleansing the world has ever experienced, which was the Great Flood, where the world was underwater for a year, complete solar year. And all but 8 or 9 humans died. The entire world, but seemingly 8. Noah, his wife Naamah, their 3 sons and those 3 wives. That's 8 people. And the Midrash says that, the king of Bashan, as we know him, he comes up in several times in the Chumash, he survived by hanging on the teva. And Noah fed him through the window. So he was also there. That means 9 people. An entire world died besides 9 people and were punished by water. Huge gevura. And at the end of that millennium, we have another tremendous act of gevura, of punishment, which is when mankind decided they were going to rebel against God, and they're all united building this tower to rebel against God, and God comes and separates. Again, it wasn't with water, but it's the idea of separation. Separates them into, that's when we had languages, separates them into 70 different languages, so they could not have this joint project, and they scattered and separated, and there went their plans, there went their rebellion against God. But again, tremendous punishment, because mankind until then was one united family. It was one group, all of mankind. And now they splintered into these 70 different groups, from which, of course, everything else happened. So we see again God's trait, gevura, see it in the day, separation of the waters, see it in the millennium with the generation of Enosh and drowning a third of the world, with the Great Flood, where all but 8 or 9 survived, only all drowned besides 8 or maybe 9. And then, of course, at the end of that millennium with the Tower of Babylonia, where it disintegrated the unity of mankind. So it went every day. Every day is God's trait. That trait is in the day. That trait impacted 1,000 years. 7 days. The final trait of God's 7 emotive traits, which are called Kabbalistically the Sfirot or Spheros, the ways God energy is expressed, is Malchut, which means sovereignty, kingship. That day was expressing that energy was Shabbos, the first Shabbos. The first Shabbos, we know it says every Shabbos is Me'in Olam Haba. It's like a taste of Mashiach. So that first Shabbos was that first taste of Mashiach in the world, where we have God's sovereignty revealed. Mashiach is when God will be sovereign over the entire world. God's sovereignty, Malchus, the first Shabbos. Every Shabbos is Me'in Olam Haba. It's a taste of Mashiach. That's why we know, people say, when was fire created? We know, our sages say, that first Saturday night. For the 7 days of creation, the sun was always shining. There was no night. And then, there's Boker, but the sun was always there. Everything, all the constellations, everything was like all happening in those 7 days. And that first Saturday night, it was dark. And to make Havdalah, God gave Adam the gift of fire. So that's when fire was created. That creates 1,000 years. So we have the 7th day, Malchut, sovereignty. We have the day, Shabbos, God's sovereignty is reigning in the world. And we have the millennium, which is Mashiach. So therefore, we have built into the world that 7th millennium from the year 6000 on, from 6 to 7, that is the millennium of Mashiach. Sages explain that millennium is actually the 2nd stage of Mashiach, meaning there's the first stage, which is considered more the natural stage, and then we'll have the 2nd stage, which will be supernatural, though we're told we could really have the 1st and 2nd in one, together, or we gradually enter the 1st. According to the Rebbe, we're already in the 1st stage, and then we come to the 2nd, which is completely supernatural. So the 1st stage has to start before the year 6000, because we already have to be in the 2nd stage by the year 6000. So all of that is why, if you ever hear the concept of oh, it's late in the cosmic clock, or oh, Mashiach should have been here already. If you ever heard those terms, this is based on this whole concept that I'm teaching now, that we know we're in the year 5786. 5786, when by the year 6000, we have to be already within the second stage of Mashiach. It's late. And of course, if we go back into the original model, it's Friday afternoon. It's Friday afternoon. It's getting late. It's getting close to Shabbos. And the Jews have this tremendous ability. We can bring Shabbos early, right? In Chicago, it's 20 minutes early. I don't know, Yerushalayim, it's an hour or something. We have the ability, we can always take on Shabbos early. So that's why when we're looking and it's Friday afternoon and it's late, then we can bring Shabbos early. And by the time Shabbos comes, we have to already be in the second stage of Mashiach. So that's this concept that, yeah, we're late, and it's got to happen, and it's got to happen now. What will we lose in the process of Mashiach's coming? Well, we're not going to lose anything in the process of Mashiach's coming. We're going to gain, because anything good that we have now will continue. We're not going to lose anything good. We're going to lose the pressures. Because in exile, which is galut, the situation we're in now, pressure creates growth, right? We grow from stress. We grow from pressure. We grow from competition. We grow from challenge. But Mashiach, we're not going to be growing from pressure. So we're not going to need to have any pressure to create our growth. Growth meaning in a secular sense, or in a religious sense, or in a spiritual sense. On no level are we going to need pressure for growth. So all the good we'll have, all the good will continue, and all the pressure that creates our growth now, we won't need it, we won't have. Are we going to have emotions then? Positive, negative. We will still be humans, right? We're not going to turn into angels. That would be a real downer after everything we've been through, to turn into angels. Like, no. It's much better to be a human. It's much better to be a Jew than an angel. So we're going to have love. We're going to have sadness. We're going to have jealousy. We'll have all the emotions, but they'll all be in a godly way. Meaning we won't have, because again, there's no evil inclination. So the evil inclination, with its, cohort in crime, the animal soul, takes these emotions and makes them very negative. So imagine having jealousy, but the jealousy is only positive. The jealousy is, you look at someone else and you're like, wow, I wish I daven like them. I wish I had as much love for another Jew that they have. I wish I had as much devotion to the land of Israel as they have. So I'm jealous. I'm jealous of their accomplishments, but it's not a negative jealousy. It's something that's spurring me to greater accomplishments. So we'll have the traits, but only in their godly manifestation. Will there be, all the questions are coming from this, so to speak, course was structured on questions people asked me. So it's all like in a manner of questions, because these are the questions and these are the answers. Will there be crime by Mashiach? Well, the same thing. There won't be crime, because it's not only that the Jews won't have an evil inclination. The entire world will only be manifesting godliness, will only be connected in a positive way. Every human being will only want God, will only want to serve God, will only want to connect God. So nobody in the world will be looking, wanting, desiring. It won't be like in their radar to do something against God's will. Like, won't even exist. Like I would imagine now my children are older. When my children were younger, I was thinking, imagine Mashiach coming and they coming home from school and saying, Ma, I learned in school this thing. Forget what it's called. Oh yeah, and Avera. Like, Ma, did you ever know anyone that didn't Avera? Because it will seem so preposterous to them. What? You knew God, you believed in God, you knew it was wrong, and you did it anyway? That's too weird to fathom. I mean, probably you never knew anyone that didn't have Avera. Like, why would anyone do something like that? That will be the world by Mashiach. It's so clear and revealed. Our eyes are so completely open. Anything else is just like, it's not even a question. It'll be like a strange, weird question. Any human, now here we're talking about non-Jews, that's truly evil will die immediately. Complete punishment for their actions, because they won't merit to enjoy the days of Mashiach. And the rest, every other human, all 8 billion that are left, will have no evil within them, because all evil is removed. So it's not only the Jews. Every human being will be a perfect Noachai. So there'll be nothing evil in the entire world. All of our dark places will be removed. All of our points of pain will be released. A lot of pain will be released because we're going to understand why. It says in Yeshaya and Isaiah that we're all going to say, not because it's scripted, it's going to come out of our lips spontaneously, at least how the verse says it, thank you, God, because you were angry with me. Not because you were angry. Why do we thank God for his anger? Because now we look back and we say, what I understood as anger, I see now it was your good. I see now it was your kindness. I see now it was your love. So I could honestly say to God, every single one of us will sincerely say to God, thank you for all the times I felt you were being harsh with me. Because now when my eyes are completely open, when I understand and know everything, it was all love. So that's releasing a lot of pain. No falls by Moshiach, not even a minor fall. And again, it's all God. There's no reason for any negativity. There's not even reason, like I'm saying, even to fall. Not only spiritually, physically, no falls. I said, the whole world is like a picture crooked. And Moshiach, the picture is straight. The Rebbe points out that the word, it's very interesting, the word for redemption in Hebrew is geula. And what word is embedded in geula? What word that seems like the antithesis of redemption is in the word geula? Take away one letter, Gimel, Aleph, Vav,
I'm writing it down.
Right.
Aleph.
I could, of course, like do some whiteboard situation, but it's been so many years since I've done that. I probably
Gola?
What word?
Gola?
Gola. What does Gola
Which
mean?
means the golem? I don't know.
No, that's Golam. What's Gola?
Gola.
Gimel, Vav, Lamed, Hey. Do you know what Gola means?
It's a word, but I don't know what
It's
it
a
means.
word, and the word means exile. Just
Oh.
like galut.
Oh.
Galus, gola, exile. So Bob Rebbe says, look at that. The word for redemption, geula, 4 of the 5 letters, is the word gola, the word exile. It's the word exile plus 1 letter. What's the extra letter?
Aleph for one.
Aleph.
Hashem.
Exactly. I don't need to teach this class. I'll give you El the mic, right? Goyla plus Aleph. Aleph stands for many things, but the most basic thing is Aleph Alufo Shel Olam, which means the master or the chief of the world. In modern Israel, you have Aluf, right? Like the generals are the Aluf. The commanders are the Aluf. So Alufo Shel Olam, the commander, the master of the world, God. So what are we learning from the Geula? Of course, we know in the Hebrew language, every word has a lot of spiritual significance, and the word, as we've discussed, is the energy, the spiritual energy of that concept. So the spiritual energy of Geula is Gola, is exile, plus Aleph, Alufo Shel Olam. What do you think is the message in that? Geula is Golas plus an Aleph?
When you put God in, then it's not exile anymore. It's redemption.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Exactly. What is redemption? This world with God revealed. This world plus the Aleph. This world with the Aleph shining. Meaning, and the point here is, people think of Mashiach, and this is of course the goal of this whole series we're doing, to remove that like fabrication, that Mashiach is like a fairy tale. Even the reality of Mashiach is a fairy tale. Meaning, yeah, I believe in Mashiach. It's 2 out of the, how many principles of faith. I totally believe in Mashiach. But my vision of it is a fairy tale, is Never Neverland. Is, I don't know, floating on clouds. I don't know. Maybe there'll be this pink fluffy stuff around. Whatever Disney has conditioned us to believe is what it's supposed to look like. Geula is Goila. It's the physical world. We know what a physical world is. Will there be cars by Mashiach? Absolutely. Will there be planes? Absolutely. Will there be computers? Absolutely. Of course there'll be all those things. We'll be using all of them. All that technology will exist. We're not going to need all the scientific medical advances because everyone's going to be healthy. But any technology, will there be cell phones? Of course there'll be cell phones. It's going to be a real world. I think Bechon HaMikdash, when they commissioned like an architectural plan for the third temple, they made a huge underground parking garage. We would have cars, like, in other words, they have a parking garage in the temple. Well, how are people going to get to the temple? On donkey? What are we thinking? They'll have cars. Well, where are the cars going to go? It's like nowadays to try to park in Jerusalem. The easiest place to drive in the world is Yerushalayim. Trust me, I've done it many times. So, imagine. It's Goyla. It's all of the current world with the Aleph shining, with God shining, with all the darkness gone. The darkness gone, but everything that's not darkness, the world with God shining through. It's not like, and then there's going to be a fairy tale different world, waving a magic wand different world. It's this physical world. Right. It's this physical world with the Aleph of God shining through on every single level. That is literally embedded. That message is embedded in the word Geula itself. God revealed, all the darkness will gone. Our world, every part of it, as God's beautiful garden. One more question we probably have time for. Are we different today? We just said that we're so close to Moshiach, that it's Friday afternoon, that it's late Friday afternoon, that you could bring in Shabbos early, that every rabbi ends his speech, saying something along those lines. We all know it one way or another. We've already been through the Holocaust. We got lots of merit. So if we're so close to Mashiach, are we different? Actually, we are. We actually are different. The Rebbe says, all of the spiritual energy of Mashiach is already in our world, which sounds like a crazy thing, but like, yeah, I could show it to you inside, crazy to say that, but true, which means all that energy is already affecting us. It's affecting the world. We have power. The Baal Shem explains, we have power we never had before. Like we never had before, we have power. We might not look at ourselves that way. We might not realize what our powers are, but we have powers like never existed. Not because we're innately holier, but because Mashiach's already in the world. Like, for example, the Rebbe has this fascinating talk where he discusses trust. Bitachon, right? I think bitachon is the core of all of our issues. Any issue, like all roads lead to Rome, every issue leads to bitachon. It's all about trusting God. Everything is God. There's nothing but God. God is good. As the Talmud says, the nature of one who is good is to do good. He can only do good. It's all God. It's all good. Now go figure it out. So everything we deal with, we come back to bitachon. So the Rebbe has this amazing talk where he's talking about trust. And he's explaining, he shows us, historically, we can look at Moshe, Moses. We look at Yaakov, Jacob, who's like Moshe and Yaakov. And in certain situations, it seems they didn't trust as much as they should have. And then we look at ourselves, and we're the ones that can trust. We are going to have all this trust. Our trust is going to push over the fence to bring Mashiach. And it's like, what? Moshe couldn't do it. Yaakov couldn't do it. And we're going to do it? But it's not that we're greater. I mean, crazy, we're not. But there's an energy in the world that never existed before, which means we today have the ability to trust like no human being ever could have trusted before. Actually, interesting, there's like another talk of the Rebbe also in a very different way discusses this theme also of trusting. And the Rebbe says that that's actually, the Rebbe speaks, he's quoting, it's a haftarah, where clearly we see there's exile, and yet clearly it's talking about redemption. And it's like this like shared space of exile and redemption, which in essence is what we're going through now. Because it sure looks to us like exile, and we could all give plenty of examples of exile. We don't have to prove that. But the way the Lubavitcher Rebbe was talking, it's already the days of redemption. It says, our days are the days of Mashiach. We're in the days of redemption. So officially we're in the days of redemption. It sure looks like exile. So there's this like shared space where we still see exile, and yet it's redemption. All the energy of redemption is here. And the Rebbe says, so what difference does it make? What do I gain by being in redemption when the whole world looks like exile? We've got all the on the surface exile, but don't worry, it's redemption. Like this isn't the redemption we prayed for. This isn't the redemption we want. So all the spirituality of redemption is here. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. But bottom line, this still isn't it. What do I gain? It says what you gain is that you can access energy you could never have had before. And with that energy, we can create the physical reality of redemption, not just the spiritual reality of redemption that we have, but we're human beings. We can create the physical reality of redemption. And the Rebbe again focuses on the idea of trust, bitachon. And again, that we can trust like no Jews could ever have trusted before. Not because we're better than them, not because we're more spiritual, not because we're holy. We're not. But because we live in this crazy, unprecedented Mashiach time. And by grabbing on and absorbing the energy that's in the world now, we can trust in a way that nobody ever trusted before. And that trust could bring us to the complete revelation of Mashiach. The Rebbe doesn't say clearly. My feeling is that trust is so significant. I mean, so significant for all of us, and it's so significant in terms of this whole idea of bringing redemption, because trust really means looking at the world and seeing God, right? What do you mean trust? You got a diagnosis. It was a really bad diagnosis. You got to be happy and positive and know God can do anything. We'll all be good. What does that mean? It means I look at the diagnosis and I see God. I look at the doctors. I look at the hospital. I look at the scans and MRIs and the CAT scans, and I see it's all God, and God can do anything, and it's all fine because it's all God. And a person lost their job, or the stock market crashed, or they don't have any of their savings, and they could come and joy is why? It's all God. God takes, God gives, God gives, God takes. It's all God. No fear. It's all God. He runs the world. It's all God. So whenever we're pulling on trust, what we're doing is looking at the world and seeing it as God. Ain't open vado. There's nothing but God. So this is the financial reality. It's all God. This is the medical reality. It's all God. In essence, that means living Mashiach. What's Mashiach? Mashiach is when you look at the world and you see God. The difference between what we're doing now and Mashiach is now we have to work to do it. We have to work to look at that CAT scan and MRI and see God. To look at your bank statements and see God. We have to work to see Einot Milvado. It's only God. By Mashiach, there's no choice. It's obvious. It's all there is. All we will see will be God. Perhaps, my thoughts, that's why trusting God is such a tool to bring Mashiach, because trusting God is really living Mashiach. And that's, in general, what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, that the energies out there, we can live Mashiach. Like the Rebbe speaks of Avas Yisrael, right? We used to say, well, baseless hatred destroyed the temple, and therefore we need baseless love to create the temple. The Rebbe says we passed that. Do we need baseless love, Avas Yisrael? Yeah, we need Avas Yisrael to live Mashiach. Because by living it, we create it, and now we can live it. We have different abilities. We not be using our different abilities, but we really have different abilities than the world ever had before. And we could do something that none of our holy ancestors ever could do. They were holier than us. In a certain way, they were closer, they were more refined, they were more spiritual. But we could do things none of them could ever have done because the world is different. The world has the energy of Mashiach now.